Okay, let me just thank you very much to all participants for listening to us and hearing today. We are with two, let's say, my dearest friends from my professional life as well. So I would like to thank, first of all, that they are just accepting my, let's say, the invitation. Today, we have Aura Sabadus from United Kingdom. She is working for ICIS. I just learned that her tasks just extended, I think, covering the Black Sea as well. So she is well known, let's say, the researcher and also a journalist and also a publisher for the gas issues in Europe and in all Europe. Let's say the kind of specialized on the Russia and also the Black Sea countries, including Turkey. So today, Aura will start with the what's going on with the price hikes in Europe, its reflections and Nordstream and the Turkish Stream and also the Black Sea. So she will be just sharing the idea with us. Then we will be having Emre after Aura. Emre is the one of the best experts in Turkey for especially gas issues and also the power. So maybe we can just get some and ask some questions to Emre to understand the Russian negotiations and also the potential effects of Black Sea and also the power markets with these price hikes. If you let me, I would like to start with Aura. Aura, you have the right to share your screen and please share, and thank you very much again. We are just listening to you. If you have time, just use it,
Thank you, Dr. Pala, and thank you for the invitation to ANKASAM for joining. I hope you can see my slides now.
It's okay, I am okay, I'm seeing it.
Okay, I will maximize it now. As mentioned by Dr. Pala, thank you very much for the introduction. I specialize in Black Sea countries, but for this discussion today, I will start off with a quick overview of what to expect in Turkey, because obviously I guess everybody in Turkey is interested to know what could happen for the market. And of course, Emre will no doubt share more details and more information from the ground. And then I will move on to an important topic, the outlook for 2022, asking whether we're preparing for another year of crisis. After this year, we've reached record levels of prices, and this is now having a spillover effect on all areas of the economy, including food. Just yesterday, I was discussing with a friend that next year we might see record food prices. Thirdly, and linked to this topic, I will allocate a bit of time to discuss the role of Russia in this whole situation, and also how the certification, or rather the delays in the certification of Russia's Nord Stream pipeline could affect prices going forward. And then I will come back to the Black Sea region to look a little bit about the opportunities that are unfolding there, but also to discuss some of the challenges, mainly political challenges that could impact any projects going forward. So let's start. I have here a graph which compares the evolution of Turkish electricity prices as assessed by my company and those of Hungarian prices. Now, what you can see here is that there is a huge spread right now between the Turkish and the Hungarian prices, but clearly the trend is going up. This spread, and rather the Hungarian premium, or the Turkish discount, is largely linked to the fact that prices are suppressed in Turkey because of subsidies. But as you can see, the trend is definitely on the increase. In fact, it's a very steep upward trend. And this upward trend has really picked up in the second half of the year, particularly September, October, November, and this really reflects the huge increase in gas prices in Europe. Of course, in Turkey there are different fundamentals, but ultimately they are still reflected to a lesser degree in Turkey than in Europe, but they are still reflected. What's been happening, and I found this really, really interesting, is that even though spot LNG prices have been incredibly high this year, we're talking here record levels, Turkish LNG imports have actually increased quite significantly. So they have been quite high, even compared to last year when Turkey bought record levels of LNG and managed to increase the share of LNG in the total imports. And what you can see also interestingly is that even though most of the cargoes from the US were diverted to Asia, a lot more came to Turkey, probably more so to Turkey than in Europe this year. So you can see a significant increase in US LNG coming to Turkey this year compared to last year. And obviously we're talking here only the first 11 months of 2021. Another interesting element here is the gas in storage in Turkey. So what's been happening interestingly is that gas has been taken out from storage even during the summer period and autumn, and that means that Turkey starts winter on a lower level. But that's the story that we're seeing all over Europe, so it's not it's not something completely unusual. But what's unusual for Turkey specifically is that obviously demand has been increasing, and I expect that, as Emre will no doubt confirm, it's going to be record demand this year, and Turkey has been scrambling to get as much gas as possible from any sources. And this explains why there is a lot of LNG coming in, and I suppose that there will be probably more coming into December, January and February. Minimizing supply deficit. Now, one of the topics on the list for discussion today was what can be done to minimize the risk. And it's quite a hard one because obviously Turkey relies on contracted gas, and most of these volumes have already been off-taken even before the expiry of some contracts. LNG is really expensive, and the possibility to secure more gas on the spot is actually it's limited. So going forward, I thought actually quite hard about this. It was a really tough question, and one of the possibilities that occurred to me was that Turkey could maybe discuss with Azerbaijan the possibility of some backhaul imports. Now, what does that mean? We see it in Europe. It's quite a frequent, let's say it's quite a usual method of importing. And what could be done? Well, essentially, Bulgaria has a supply contract of 1 billion cubic meters with Azerbaijan, but Bulgaria is not taking all this gas. Because there is no interconnection between Greece and Bulgaria. So there could be a sort of agreement with Bulgaria, with Greece, so that some of the gas that should in theory go to Greece and then from Greece to Bulgaria, it should be netted out at the border. So rather than sending, rather than sending some of the gas which should have gone to Bulgaria but can't go to Bulgaria and is now sold in Italy, it could be stopped in Turkey. So this is based on a swap agreement, on a backhaul agreement, backhaul being a virtual reverse flow. So essentially the gas does not flow physically, but it's kept inside Turkey. And some of these volumes that should have gone to Bulgaria should be kept in Turkey. Now, this is one possibility, but of course it depends on negotiations between all parties: Turkey, Azerbaijan, Bulgaria, and Greece. The other option would be, of course, more LNG, but again, this is a very expensive option. And again, you know, consider spot sales from Russia. We saw that happening last year, but not much is happening this year. So again, you know, I'm just floating some ideas, but I'm not saying that these could be realized, because much will depend also on the other parties, in this case being Russia. In terms of electricity consumption, well, again, you know, we can go back to the old, well-tested idea of curtailments. And, you know, this is something that is now discussed in Europe by all countries. They are devising some winter plans to cut off consumption for bigger consumers, like industrial consumers. And, you know, it's something that needs to be considered if there is no gas. And then, you know, another option would be really to educate the population, to explain that there are some difficult times ahead, and that maybe, you know, rely on the population to reduce consumption. I'm not saying it's going to work, because some people like to have it warm in their homes, but I've seen it happening in countries like Moldova, for example, quite recently, when they had gas supply curtailments, and in Ukraine a couple of years ago, where the population really decided to reduce the consumption because there was no gas. But again, you know, these are last resort and extreme emergency situation. So moving on to 2022, and I'm asking whether we're going to see another year of crisis. What you can see here are our estimates, our price estimates for Cal 22, so for calendar year 22, the first quarter of next year, final quarter of next year, and summer 22. Now, the reason why you can't see summer 22 and quarter 22 is because the spread, so the difference in price between one and the other, has actually disappeared. And the reason why it's disappeared is because people expect injections in storage to be very high. And I would like to mention, as you will see in a later slide, that storage facilities in Europe have been heavily depleted, and they started the heating season at quite a low level, around 70%. Last year it was almost 90%. So if we have a very cold winter this winter, it means that many companies will be taking the gas out from storage, and storage facilities will be depleted before the start of the injection season, which in Europe is 1st of April. So we might see, you know, storage facilities actually depleted, and companies starting from a much lower level of injection. And that's the reason why the summer price for next year is going to be quite high, or looks quite high right now. I mean, I'm excluding all sorts of black swan events, like, you know, another major pandemic that could destroy demand. I'm just assuming current circumstances, and this is what we're going to see. But the price for Cal 22, we estimated that this price is going to stabilize somewhere between 55–60 euros. So it's much higher than pre-pandemic level, but lower than what we've seen this year, which is, and currently it's around 85–95, so it's within that range. Now, factors driving markets in 2022. As I said, European storage facilities are likely to be depleted much earlier than the start of the injection season, possibly as early as February 22. This means an early start to injections, and this explains the non-existent spread between summer 22 and Q4 22. Shipping rates remain relatively high, which may lead to some limited LNG deliveries, although we've heard that most of the major companies have chartered vessels for delivery in Q1. So we might see a bit more LNG coming in this winter than last winter. And the geopolitical risk is going to be very, very high. I mean, you know, everywhere you look in Europe, whether you talk Russian troops mass on the Ukrainian border, Belarus, North Africa with a dispute between Algeria and Morocco, the Balkan region, it's a very, very high volatile time, and that volatility, that geopolitical risk is going to be reflected in the in markets. Going forward, as I said, we expect annual prices to stabilize within this level. So the level of 50-60 euros translates between, let's say, $600, $700, around that level, assuming normal conditions. On the other hand, we could also expect some kind of demand destruction, because lots of fertilizer companies have been reducing production or shutting down production. And in Europe, we might see a bit more gas coming online, particularly from Norway. The Hammerfest LNG terminal was offline because of a fire. Now it's supposed to come back online and bring a bit more gas to the market. All that said, everything or much will depend on Russia's behavior in the market. And let's see what's been happening this year in terms of supplies to Europe, both LNG and Russia. So Russia, as you probably know, is you know, has been supplying about a third of demand in recent years in Europe. But this year we've seen a combination of many factors that have led to a reduction in LNG supplies, and you can see here that LNG supplies have indeed been reduced compared to 2020 and 2019, but that reduction is more seen in the second half of the year than in the first half of the year, because prices have increased both in Europe and in Asia, and many of the cargoes have gone to Asia. Russian flows have also decreased, and as you can see here, Nordstream 1 has been pretty stable, because it's a baseload pipeline, so it, you know, tends to supply a stable flow of gas to Europe. But the interesting events here were actually supplies through the so-called Yamal pipeline. The Yamal pipeline is the pipeline that comes from Russia and supplies Germany via Belarus and Poland, and Ukrainian supplies. And as you can see, maybe I should mention that Russia does not have a long-term supply contract with Poland through Yamal. So really what Russia has been doing was booking capacity on a monthly basis. The monthly capacity through Yamal is around 80 million cubic meters, but Russia booked only about 30 million cubic meters in recent months. And at the beginning of November, it only supplied about 6 million cubic meters, and then some days it didn't supply anything at all. So, you know, considering that demand was already high in Europe, no LNG coming in, there was also a reduction in supplies from Russia. The same happened through Ukraine. With Ukraine, Russia, Gazprom has a long-term contract, ship or pay contract, a 5-year contract, and it's supposed to supply about 110 million cubic meters per day. On top of that, it has been booking some firm capacity through Ukraine throughout the summer, but it stopped booking that firm capacity from September. And since October and November, it's even been reducing the supply through this long-term contract. So at the beginning of November, rather than shipping 110 million cubic meters, it only shipped 57 million cubic meters. As you can see here, and I borrowed these two slides from the Ukrainian gas transmission system operator, in the slide on your left, you can see the transit of Russian gas via Ukraine in 2021. You can see the booked capacity, and you can see how it's been reduced throughout the year. And then the other slide shows how the Ukrainian gas transmission system operator has been offering a firm and interruptible capacity. So this is different types of capacity. I don't want to bore you with technical details, but the gas transmission system operator of Ukraine offered additional capacity. But every time the capacity, the interruptible capacity was rejected, and then the firm capacity was rejected, or Russia did not book anything, the price increased. And you can see here by how much the price increased every time the capacity was not booked. Now, another element here, and again, I should mention that Russia constantly said that they were supplying gas within the contracted limits. So Russia has clients in Europe and it has long-term contracts. It supplies, and it has indeed supplied the gas within this contracted limit. But because there was high demand, European companies were asking for extra gas, and that extra gas never came. On top of that, and what really spooked the market, was the fact that Russian storage facilities in Europe, so Gazprom controls a couple of storage facilities, were quite empty. And as you can see here, this was actually really before the end of the heating season, so end of September, when storage facilities should have been at 90% fullness. Some facilities were at 2% fullness. And overall, fullness capacity in Russian-controlled storage sites was around 40%, 40–50%, something like that. In Europe, that fullness was around 70%, so slightly higher than Russian capacity, but still not as high as in previous years, as you can see here in the two slides that in the two graphs. Now, Russia, and I really wanted to get to the bottom of this story because I wanted to understand what's been happening and why is it, because lots of people came to me, lots of newspapers were asking, and lots of companies were asking, what on earth is going on? Is it purely geopolitics, or is it more technical? Is it something to do with the Russian system? So I spoke to a couple of Russian analysts, and they told me that production costs and export, so to produce and to export gas from Russia to Europe, costs around $4 per MMBTU. Now, this is a very low price, but when you compare with the prices that we've had in Europe this year, around $35, you can see that actually the profit was enormous for Russia. So, if you consider a $4 production and export cost and the $35 price on the market, on the free market in Europe, you can make your own calculations and find out how much that cost. The other argument was that it's quite expensive to book more capacity through Ukraine because the Ukrainian transmission tariff is the more expensive one out of all the pipelines operated by Russia in Europe, which is true. It's absolutely true. But again, the difference in cost between the Ukrainian Yamal, Nordstream, Turkstream, sorry, no Turkstream, but Nordstream, Yamal, and Ukrainian transmission tariff is actually in euro cents. So this would have made a huge difference last year when prices were very low, but not this year when prices were already very high. A more plausible argument is that Russia actually had to fill its own gas storage, and that's absolutely possible. They had a tough winter as well, like we did in Europe, and they had to fill out the storage facilities. That's true. The other possibility is that the gas that feeds the Ukraine and Nord Stream comes from different parts of Russia. So Nord Stream, for example, is fed by gas that is produced up north from Bavanenkovo field. The gas that is supplying Central Europe through Ukraine comes from so-called Nadim Purtaz area. And this means, and what the Russian analyst was saying was that there may not be enough gas in the Nadim Purtaz area to supply Central Europe via Ukraine. Now, we don't know because there is no data available. This is impossible to calculate, impossible to verify. But this is the argument that has been brought by Russian analysts. So moving on, and very quickly, I don't want to monopolize the discussion, but very quickly, another element that is going to impact the price is the certification. I'm sorry, is the certification. It's the certification of Nord Stream 2. This is the pipeline that Russia has built. It's completed technically, but it needs to be certified both technically and by the German regulator in order to operate. And there are European regulations that say that it should be unbundled. So the transmission operations should be separate from the selling operations, so the selling arm of Gazprom, and that the transmission operation should be subject to third-party access. So other companies should be able to access it, to transparency, and tariffs, transmission tariffs should be set competitively. Gazprom submitted the application at the beginning of September, but in November, the Ukrainian companies Naftogaz and the transmission system operator got the right to be part of the certification process because Ukraine will be immediately impacted by Nord Stream when Nord Stream 2 is operational. But the second day, the following day, the German regulator said that it was going to suspend the procedure because Nord Stream 2, so the company that oversees Nord Stream, has to create a subsidiary that is based in Germany, and that the certification and the European regulations will only apply to the section of the pipeline that finds itself in German waters, but not to the stretch of the pipeline. This is an argument which is likely to be heavily disputed and is likely to create problems for the certification because, you know, the European Commission as well as the Ukrainians are going to say the third-party access and the EU rules should apply to the whole stretch of the pipeline. So we're going to see some interesting debates there. Even if it's certified by Bundesnetzagentur, so the German regulator, it needs to go to the European Commission. The European Commission has to make a decision on that. And then it needs to come back to the Minister of Economy in Germany to give the final approval. The other problem is that the Minister of Economy in Germany right now is a minister from the Green Party, which is opposed to Nord Stream 2. So we're going to see many, many, many interesting elements coming in over the next couple of days. So finally, coming back to the Black Sea region, which is the area that is of interest to all of us, I would say that there is huge potential in this area. All littoral countries have gas, or they are thought to have gas. Obviously, the biggest discovery in recent years was in Turkey. And Turkey, I would say, is probably the most advanced in terms of taking the gas out or expecting to take the gas out. Romania has also been trying to get the gas out. It has around 250 billion cubic meters. And in my calculation, for very, very conservative calculations, excluding the Russian zone, EEZ, I would say that the reserves are around 1.5 trillion cubic meters, if not more. So this is very conservative, very, very conservative estimate. Now, the problem is, and there is always, somewhere there always has to be a problem, that the EEZ, so the economic zone of Crimea, which was annexed by Russia, occupied by Russia a couple of years ago, stretches into or tends to overlap with the EEZs of Turkey, of Romania, and of Bulgaria. Now, in the past, when Crimea was part of Ukraine, there were very well-defined treaties. And, you know, Ukraine knew that it had this good neighborhood treaty with Romania, with Turkey, with Bulgaria. Now, we don't know what's going to happen because the whole status of Crimea is currently debated at the International Court of Justice. So that needs to be debated, and the international courts need to establish the political status of Crimea, and going forward, that could be a problem. So I'm really hoping that it's, that there will be no political problem or no legal problem emerging from this, but it's something that you need to be aware of. And of course, the other problem right now is the war in Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine. So finally, as I said, total aggregated reserves, very conservative estimate, and it's my own estimate, 1.5 trillion cubic meters, excluding Russia. Domestic production could really help reduce or limit dependence on imports and make local economies more efficient and more effective. But there is geopolitical as well as legal risk. So in conclusion, to sum up everything I've said, winter 21-22 may be difficult for consumers across the Northern Hemisphere, particularly if it's unseasonably cold, both in Europe and in Asia. The final part of winter could be risky because most of the gas will have been taken out from storage. Turkey could be affected because of record gas prices and not much flexibility in terms of spot purchases on the pipelines. The price outlook looks slightly better than for this year, so the price will sort of stabilize a bit lower, at least that's what we expect, but summer prices could be higher. Russia has, to a certain extent, contributed to this current crisis. I'm not saying that it created it, but it has contributed to a certain extent. And the certification of Nordstream 2 could create some further volatility. And going forward, the Black Sea region could provide a lot of opportunity, but there are also some challenges that everybody needs to be aware of. So I conclude here, and I'm happy to take questions from you, Dr. Pala, from Emre, from the audience, or anybody who has some questions to this presentation.
Okay. Yes, we learned a lot. Mulțumesc. We learned a lot. So it is really helpful, and I really just, it's a kind of finding the missing part of the puzzle, It's, but as far as I understood, I am also wondering your opinion on this, that if Nord Stream 2 getting the certificated or approved or whatever, who can guarantee the gas price hikes will be donated or controlled by the Gazprom? So it seems that the Ukraine bypass policy of Russia still ongoing, and their preference is that no Ukraine, and it will be the same for Yamal 1. I think they would like to cut it off, and this is why they are just forcing them to accept Nord Stream 2 by cutting off the Yamal as well. As you remember, I don't know, when I started in late 90s working on Gazprom and others, the Yamal 2 pipeline was on the table as well. Then suddenly, in some of the problems with Poland, especially Ukraine and Poland, Gdansk pipeline made some big risks and crises between Russia, Poland, and Ukraine. Then the Russian side decided to postpone or terminate the Yamal. And we already know that Nadim Purtaz areas production will be decreasing, and this is why they just pushed especially that Bovenenko field and the Karaseyev and also the Yamal, some of the other fields of Yamal. So I would like to just ask you that, what is your expectation about the ending of the Yamal and adding all to Nord Stream 2 and also bypassing Ukraine and its effects on the gas prices and also the storage cost?
Yeah, I mean, the contract that Russia has with Ukraine is supposed to end in 2024. And in theory, Russia should be shipping gas through the pipeline. I mean, it's paying for the pipeline, but it's under no obligation to continue shipping the gas. So the expectation is, and this is what the Ukrainians expect, is that once Nord Stream 2 comes in commercial operation, there won't be any more gas through Ukraine. And as you say, there may not be any gas through Yamal either. So we're just going to see 110 billion cubic meters of gas coming through Nord Stream 1 and 2 into Germany, and then some of this gas being reversed back into Eastern Europe. What I do expect as a result of this, and because there are capacity transmission constraints in Eastern Europe, I expect Central and Eastern Europe to become premium markets over Western Europe, because these markets will depend, they have no alternative. These markets will depend on Russian gas being reversed back into Central Europe. And as a result of that, because Gazprom will be controlling both the pipelines and the supply, Central European markets will become premium markets over Western Europe, which has access to LNG and to other supply, Norwegian gas. So, you know, unless there is some gas coming from Poland into Ukraine, or, you know, through the Trans-Balkan, so the Western line, as it's called in Turkey, to supply more gas to come in. So, you know, there are possibilities. I mean, Turkey could be a wonderful possibility to allow the gas to be imported in Turkey and then shipped in reverse into Eastern Europe. Whether it's LNG or any other Central Asian gas that could come in, that would be wonderful. But the question is, because Russia controls all these pipelines, the question is, will they want it? Will they accept competition?
Aura, you know me from my BOTAŞ days. I was working on that all pipeline projects like Nabucco and others. And this is our main problem, to analyze who is the owner of Western pipeline, the ownership status. This is very important. Who is controlling this?
Individual TSOs nowadays, because all legacy contracts stop now.
Okay, so Gazprom can never say anything with regard to this.
Well, Gazprom in theory cannot. But if you look at what's been happening in Bulgaria, and this is just, you know, it completely slipped everybody's attention.
I think.
Because they built Turkstream, and the gas comes from Turkstream and links with this new pipeline that was built in Bulgaria. A whole section from Stranja, so from Malkochlar to Provadia in northern Bulgaria, is now blocked by Gazprom. So, you know, that would have been essential. It's about a 120-kilometer stretch of the pipeline. It's not much, but it was absolutely critical for the gas to come in the south, so either Turkey or Greece, and then being shipped into North, Romania, Ukraine, Moldova, what have you.
Yeah.
But it's now blocked.
Yeah, but you know, somebody has to do something for Godfather Putin. So he's playing with everything, not accepting anything, not helping the regional peace and prosperity as well. So the finding solutions for the certification of Nord Stream 2, it's also a tricky stuff for Germans and European Union or whatever. Somebody has to stop that negotiation and force Russia to accept allowing the Turkmenistan gas, maybe with the swap, let's say the agreement, via Turkstream to Europe. Also using the Western line for Turkmen gas as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you can give the Nord Stream 2 stuff, the approval to Putin. This has to be like this. Otherwise, there will be no Ukraine, there will be war in Ukraine, there will be no eastern part of Ukraine. They will be just decided to and voted for Russia. It is clear. So we are talking about a peaceful Black Sea region and peaceful gas production. And in my questions, I also sent it to you with the ANKASAM. Also, could we expect any international oil companies to invest in more in Romania, in Bulgaria, all together with Turkey, if a kind of war in Ukraine just happens, and also Crimea stuff? What is your opinion on this as well?
No, I'll be very brief because I realize Emre needs to talk as well, but in circumstances, I don't think so. I mean, the situation is quite dangerous, and we've seen in Ukraine, just before Crimea, the Crimean occupation, Shell and Exxon were interested, and they left. Exxon left Romania recently. But under current circumstances, and especially with the prospect of war, as well as legal uncertainties, I can't see any big companies coming in, to be honest. I mean, it was nice to see that Wood, for example, the Scottish company, just signed a deal with TPAO with TP yesterday, or it was announced yesterday. But
that we will be having Schlumberger and Subsea 7 as well. So it's
indeed,
good for us. But
well done.
as a Turk, when I'm just looking at the East Med gas discussions, they are saying that this is all kind of disputed waters, let's say. But all oil companies and gas companies, the biggest, are just working in East Med. Even the reserves and also the pipeline or whatever, the cooperation is in question, I can say, for the Middle East and also the market. But if Russia just behaves like this, and I am expecting Russia will behave like this, because they like disputes, they like to cut down all alternative sources to Russian gas in Europe. So this is why he can do. We have to be very careful, and the Turkey can help for creating a kind of a peaceful Black Sea gas corridor for all countries, I think. This is my, let's say, the idea. But somebody stop Mr. Putin, somebody forced Mr. Putin to accept the kind of swap agreements with Turkey for Turkmen gas or Uzbek gas, I don't know, the Central Asian gas via Turkey to Balkans and Europe by using the existing empty pipeline, Western route as well. This is my thinking. So I would like to thank to you, Aura, and would like to skip our attention to Emre. I am sure that you will be just a kind of complementary kind of, and also completing presentations, because Emre will be analyzing the core of the business, the potash and the Russian negotiations, and also Turkish liberal market, and also Black Sea. We can say something. So keep in there. So maybe we can ask some questions together to Emre. Emre, do you have any questions? You can also ask Aura afterwards. I will be giving you a final words after your presentation as well, to both of you.
Yeah.
Just let's, Emre, we can talk to you. Thank you, Aura.
Thank you very much. I'm really privileged to join the session with two esteemed colleagues, you and Aura. And also, I would like to convey my special thanks to ANKASAM for gathering us. Also, thanks, Aura, for the very comprehensive presentation that underlined the hottest topics of the region, as well as Turkey. Well, as Aura mentioned, this winter will be challenging for Turkey due to the expiring contracts. We already 7.9% of long-term contracts phased out during this year, and another 8 BCM will start to expire at the end of this year and in early 2022. And this makes this winter hard for Turkey when we take the demand increase into account. Based on the latest figures, the demand is around 29% higher in 2021 on yearly basis. And also the daily demand is around 28 to 29% higher this winter. We still have mild weather. I recently updated my simulation a couple of weeks ago, and I found out that around 25 to 30 days in December and January carries high supply risk, depending on the weather conditions. If we have cold weather, if we have the same weather like we had last winter, it will be around 30 days. Because now Turkey's physical entry capacity, including Malkoçlar, is around 395 MCM per day. But the operational capacity, based on the contractual volumes, is around 260 or 265, including the underground storage and LNG capacity. Turkey's highest peak demand was recorded on 19th of January this year with 280 MCM per day. And this year, the peak demand is expected to exceed 300 MCM, which is quite high for the operational entry capacity. 2 degrees Celsius is critical for Turkey's gas supply security. If the weather in Marmara region, where the consumption is high because of Istanbul and the industrial city Kocaeli, if the temperature remains below 2 degrees Celsius during 4 consecutive days, then the red alert comes for supply security. And I expect around 20 days for a potential gas shortage, and accordingly the rolling blackouts for electricity. As you know, we had experienced such shortages in the last decade, and the government always prioritized the gas consumption of residentials by cutting the gas flow through the gas-fired power plants. So this year will be very hard, and we see the efforts of Ankara in order to find additional pipe gas to meet the winter demand, as well as LNG is an option. But according to the latest statements of the minister and the chair of BOTAŞ, they have agreed principally, but not has been finalized the procedures for the next year's contracts. From my point of view, Turkey made a big mistake last year, or let's say 2 years ago. You know, the market structure was a bit shifting towards a seller market thanks to lower prices and increased competition, but now it's fully turned to a it was a buyer's market, but now it turned into a strong seller market. You know, Turkey implemented a spot pipe gas import regulation in order to diversify its imports and also for achieving flexible and competitive prices. But it nearly failed. This strategy had failed. Now Turkey is willing to extend its long-term contracts. Also, Ankara considers the Black Sea gas fields as one of the important pillars of its energy strategy, as they are pushing for shorter terms for the contracts. You know, minister underlined 3 to 10 years contract. And also, most probably, we understood that the additional volume, 1.75 from Turkstream, will be a flexible contract. No further details are available at the moment. But that's the picture for winter. Yeah, and also some interesting developments we see at the moment in terms of importers. You know, a newly established company booked the capacity to import gas from the Gürbulak entry point on Turkey's border with Iran. This seems like a highly politically influenced attempt to import gas to Turkey, and the company hasn't disclosed the origin of the gas, but I personally expect an import from Turkmenistan to Turkey. They they will, most probably the gas, of course, the gas coming from Turkey, from Iran is mostly originated from Turkmenistan, and most probably this new import will be originated for Turkmenistan. Also, the US sanctions is an important part of this business. On the other hand, most of the companies who were allowed to sign contract with Russia were how to say, some of them were government linked and some of them was Gazprom linked companies, apart from Shell. The negotiations, the private companies is not certain at the moment. There are there most probably we will see newcomers to the market, and also some existing players confirm their appetites to extend, to renew their contracts. So nothing is certain for 2022. And also, when discussing the Turkish market, we also need to underline the unbundling of BOTAŞ. It was included in the first draft of the omnibus law, but now it's sent to the parliament without the unbundling and the liberalization articles. And also, on the other hand, the policies and the regulations, when we assess them, we see a strong influence on the Ministry of Energy. We see an increase in the influence of policies. EMRE is regularly transferring its rights and responsibilities to ministry by the laws. Every law adopted in the last 2 or 3 years transferred some important regulatory roles to the Ministry of Energy. Now, from my point of view, to be honest, we are in a frankly speaking session. EMRE is now doesn't have any regulatory roles in the market other than the tariffs. And also the latest tariffs are determined by the Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank, and the Ministry of Energy. EMRE just announced the tariffs which the other authorities agree on. So I'm not optimistic about the future, about the near future of the energy markets, to be quite frankly. Yeah.
Emre.
Yeah.
And also, if you have any other, it's very good to hear your.
Thank you very much. I just want to give some time for the questions if you have.
Yeah.
Time is almost over.
Yeah, okay. It's okay. If you have some points, you can also raise. But you just told about a really important stuff in here. So, who is that company? We don't know. From Gürbülak region, from Iran to Turkey. I remember there were some given rights for Iraqi gas to Siyah Kalem, and give rights to some other companies. I don't know, Sıtkı Ayans company maybe, for Iranian gas. They have already said that it is a Turkmen. Maybe this is related with this, let's say, the concession, I can say. And also, you are right, they are regulating the regulatory authority in Turkey. So I am really sorry to hear about all that stuff, because we are far away from the liberal market. I really understood that natural gas is a part of foreign affairs. It is not a potato. It is also understandable.
Yeah.
But you have private sector in here and private companies, and many of them in Europe. And we are trying to align with the European markets as well. So why you just named an amount? I'm just saying in my talks that 15 BCM in a year as a playing ground for the private sector. And, defining the rules, more liberal market, and lift off the subsidies. This is the most critical ones, in Turkey. And we are not talking about do not give the poor people a cheap gas or a zero price gas or electricity. I'm also backing this. But you have to put this one of the budget of the ministries. I don't know, it can be economy ministry or the energy ministry. It's better than to mentioning TRT or a television, let's say the shares in the bills. But you can put for the poor people to a ministry. This is not subsidy, Then you can have and not distorted prices in the market. This is very important, And otherwise, you are also only talking with the Gazprom, and you already said that the newcomers is expected. It is normal, each and every time, if you are they are just changing the names. But again, we are talking about Gazprom and the Russia only. So this is not the liberalization, again, the Gazpromization of the market. They can directly or indirectly control your market. So this is why you have to open for the other sources. You can use your private sector to open the other sources, including LNG, including spot pipe gas. Just let them do, and use BOTAŞ and maybe with the Azerbaijan SOCAR, just construct pipelines in Balkans. So you can be there before they are the part of the European Union as well. So your one or two of your big companies will be the European players as well. So just to learn and work together, but there is no attempt on it. I wrote many things when I was a part of the state. I wrote as an academician. I guess, nobody is reading anything, or, they don't want to do anything for that liberalization process, I can say.
Yeah. And I still keep your books in my library. Just just sent you a picture a couple of weeks ago. One of your books you wrote maybe 10 years ago.
It's we are just writing for only 300 people who knows me. So it is just a letter to the experts. So the Turkish side doesn't like the real experts and the real, let's say, the books, I can say. But this is very, very critical. And what is your, let's say, the expectation about the Black Sea, Emre? If there is a giant reserves in there, is it a game changer for our current account deficit and also the power prices in Turkey? Because you already mentioned indirectly, they cut down the CCGTs, they are cutting down the power. So what kind of good news from Black Sea for Turkey? Is there anything?
Yeah, as an engineer, I would like to answer your question as an engineering from the engineering point of view. In order to utilize this gas, we need to be sure about the commercial plan. There is no commercial plan. Most probably, TP took the FID without assessing a commercial plan. So this raises some question marks on my mind. So this gas will have a break-even cost when you consider the capex and opex and all investments. But I don't expect Turkey to produce this gas fully on commercial basis. The gas is scheduled to be online in 2023 when we will have elections. So the commercial part of this gas is not sufficient enough for me to assess its impact on the market, and also for the international players. Now, this lack of such a commercial business plan makes the predictions difficult.
Yeah, okay, so I understood, but I'm just saying that to the people also, maybe the Black Sea gas will be on air. It's better to take it rather than keep it in the underground. So it will be a game changer, but you are right. It requires a kind of commercial plan. I am sure that TPAO and the Energy Ministry already started to make a kind of plan in here. I don't know, but you know, we are just in the gas age. It is clear, and it has to be utilized for first for our nation, then to our neighbors. If it is the case, you can also use that gas in some of the let's say creating new economic activities like fertilizers. We never used in the fertilizer sector gas, but the Romania using in 1 BCM, 1.5 BCM gas for fertilizers. So it's very important. Creating new areas, kind of, you know, a kind of CNG to the cars. It is still in there. So this is why when I speak with our EMRA colleagues, they are also really just waiting that gas to create a new electricity tariff model based on the, let's say, the Black Sea gas. But this is the early stage. And you are right. Yeah. Everybody has to see that the commercial plan as well. But there are some kind of options. Hope they are utilized that options and seriously consider and also evaluate all that options for our nations, I can say. So thank you very much. Do you have anything to add, Aura? Anything, you know?
Yes, I actually had a question to Emre.
Yeah, please.
He said that the unbundling of potash was included in the omnibus law. I saw that as well. But it's interesting that they removed it. So it's interesting, first of all, that they included it and they were actually sending signals that they were serious about it. But also interesting that they removed it. Do you know why they removed it?
Yeah, they removed it in the last minute with the proposal of the presidential budget and strategy office. And they also removed the article which lifts the subsidies. Also, the article that defines the spot imports is also removed. So, you know, it was defining the spot imports up to 5 years. And the law that is submitted to the parliament is now turned into an electricity market law amendment. There are only few articles about the gas market. I talked to some friends from ministry who worked on who prepared the law. They said the presidential office decided to discuss the unbundling issues sometime in the future and do not want to bring it to the parliament because of the possible opposition parties' reaction. So, the unbundling process is now suspended with an open-end schedule.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, as far as I know and learned that the government also decided to work on Teyyaş and also Botaş at the same time in a one bill. So this is also one of the reasons for the restructuring and whatever, the reorganizing. They are just saying together with the electricity sector, I think. But, you know,
I mean, it was interesting that they resurrected the issue of unbundling, which has been such a sensitive thing throughout the years.
Yeah.
he actually made some concrete proposals, and then all of a sudden it's gone.
You know, it's because of when they see the gas prices like at this stage. So, and personally, I am thinking that especially the Gazprom also prefers to see only potash. So they are not very happy about the private importance. It is also.
But realistically speaking, with all the subsidies burden that potash has, what's the prospect for potash?
Yeah, it is. It is also not clear yet. I can say that we have some time, more 2 years at least, to see what's going to happen for potash. And also, we signed the Paris Climate Change as Turkey. But at the same time, we also opened the way for importing of, let's say, the coal, the imported coal in Turkey. So I guess this is the hard times. It is not easy to manage the electricity and also power and gas system with these high prices if you are not producing, if you are importing as well. So this is why at this time you need the conglomerates and also your state companies to, you know, because it's a kind of negotiations, and it is not a kind of liberal market contract or whatever negotiations. It is just a talk to government shaking hands with the bilateral negotiations. So because of the next 2 years at least is a gray area for energy prices and also especially for gas and power. So government just decides to keep everything as it is, I think, for the that transition period. Then we will see, I guess, what's going to happen to potash. But as I said, if you are creating flexible, let's say, the mechanisms for import and export gas from or to Turkey, you need to create a level playground for the private sector. You can just name the amount. It is also easy. It is also very easy. It is also easy for the foreign investors to understand, oh, okay, this is a pool. We know that there is a kind of 15 BCM something gas is freely marketed in there. So this is the question. This is this is the decision. So, you have anything to add, Emre?
No, nothing on the top of this. Thank you very much.
Okay, I thank you. Aura, you have any other closing remarks or?
Well, since you mentioned Central Asian gas, I think it would be great if Central Asian gas could make its way, you know, not just Azeri gas, but also Turkmen gas into Europe. And I know that the Ukrainians, for example, are screaming for Central Asian gas to be transiting Ukraine. But it would be great, you know, if this gas could reach Europe through Turkey, through Ukraine, and really would help to create more flexibility. So, you know, this is my message.
Aura, it was my, let's say, kind of dream to have that Turkmen gas in Europe always. As I said, there are some empty pipelines, and also Mr. Putin can win the game for Nord Stream 2. Just only he had a swap agreement with Turkmen gas and be active our Turkish contract, 30 BCM. And they can deliver the gas to Turk Stream 2, to Balkans or any other place with the existing ones. Otherwise, we had a project when I was a part of Potash to laying a pipeline from Turkey to Ukraine, taking the Turkmen gas some 20 years ago. So with this price, it is always possible.
No, absolutely.
But the Trans-Caspian site is not clear yet because of Mr. Putin, and the opening the way from Iran is not a trustable one for a long-term delivery because no one trusts Iran.
Let's see what happens with this Iranian gas, Turkmen gas that comes into Turkey next month.
Yeah,
maybe that's a test. Maybe someone is testing.
Yeah, maybe it is just a tester for us. Okay,
exactly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation.
All that good points. It's really nice to hear your voices in here. And I would like to thank on behalf of not only me, but also the ANKASAM and our president, Professor Mehmet Sepettin Erol as well, to both of you. Thank you very much and see you in some other. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
very
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye bye.
Bye
Have a
bye.
ni-
Bye
have a-
everyone.
Have a nice weekend. Bye.
You too. Bye.